and the purpose of this video is to serve as a sort of explanation, a basic explanation of my what I guess what grounds my theological outlook. Okay, I've made a similar political. I made a similar video explaining what grounds my political outlook. Now I need to make a video explaining what grounds my theological outlook. And again, my premise is to keep videos about theology strictly separate from videos about politics. Right? We're gonna keep these two separate. So this would be a Brother Miguel video, right? This is okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to look at the two main influences that that influence me in terms of theological sort of like theological is there such thing as a theological epistemology? I don't know. If this is a stretch. It's a stretch. Let's call that. I'm gonna pull that term out of my ass. Okay, theological epistemology. All right, let's call it that. Right. So the first thing I look at is something called radical theology. And radical theology, I am a part of the radical theology discussion group on what is it called, on Facebook. I forgot if it was Facebook or Reddit. In one of those, there's a radical theology discussion group, and I left it behind years ago because I got involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and you're not supposed to look at this stuff. So I mean, during the year and a half that I was brainwashed, that I was like, but that my mind was controlled by the truth, and I was not looking at any of this. And then during the last year when I was PMO, which is about to end very soon, the PMO status is about to end very soon. My relationship with the witnesses is about to end very, very soon. I think I'm gonna be disfellowshipped, big time disfellowshipped. So because the truth is gonna come out that I'm an apostate, and that's fine. I need that needs to happen. Anyways, radical theology was like I was into this, right? And I'm gonna read about radical theology. This time I'm not using Wikipedia. I'm gonna use encyclopedia.com, right? Encyclopedia.com has a pretty nice article about it, and I'm gonna post a link in the description to this article from encyclopedia.com so you can see yourself. And it defines radical theology was the name applied in the 1960s to a widely publicized current in American Protestant theology, which was fundamentally skeptical about modern man's ability to speak meaningfully about God. Skeptical about modern man's ability to speak meaningfully about God. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. So, Yeah, the theological divergencies among the radical theologians were too great for them to form a school. Nevertheless, their works were marked by a number of common convictions. Faith in the transcendent God. Okay, here we go. Faith in the transcendent God of traditional Christian theology is no longer possible for the contemporary man. That's the first perspective. Faith in the transcendent God of traditional Christian theology is no longer possible for the contemporary man. So, I mean, the God of, like if I apply this to Jehovah's Witnesses, quite frankly, Jehovah is a caricature of the Abrahamic God. Whether you call that God Yahweh or Allah or El, whatever you want to call him. I don't know. It's a stretch, but what was it? Akhnatens Ra'aton, the disc, whatever you want to call the Abrahamic God. Faith in this God is yeah, it's not really, yeah. The theologian can no longer work in the church, and the theologian. I mean, I'm not a theologian, but definitely, I cannot function in the same environment as Christendom. The churches of Christendom or Niceno-Constantinopolitan Christianity or whatever. And faith in the transcendent God of traditional Christian theology. I don't believe in the traditional God of Christian theology anymore, because my premise is, and I picked up this in passing in Richard Dawkins, the God delusion. Uh, he quotes in passing. He mentions this Australian professor who says that, you know, uh, a God that does not require existence is greater than a God that does. A creator that does not require existence is greater than one who does. Uh, the true God does not exist. The supreme God does not exist. So that's, obviously radically different from um, you know, the traditional Christian theology of God. So, you know, yeah, sure. So is God, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent? Omniscient, maybe. Omnipotent, maybe. Omnipresent, no, because he doesn't exist. So I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. All right. The theologian can no longer work in the church. His concerns are no longer the classical churchly concerns, liturgy, prayer, otherworldly salvation. He must move out into the world, since, like other contemporary men, his fundamental preoccupation is the struggle to maintain human values in the context of modern secular society. Okay, and this was in the 60s, right? So this was like high modernism or whatever, before postmodernism hit in the late 70s. So, I mean, they still talk about human values and modern secular society. A modern secular society ceased to exist in the 80s and 90s when postmodernism deconstructed it, and human values also were deconstructed by postmodernism. As a result of postmodernism, there is no longer an absolute truth. There is no absolute human values. There is no absolute truth in the concept of human values, because postmodernism destroyed that. Postmodernism killed all truth in the course of the 80s and 90s. What is in 2000s, what is left in the 2010s and early 2020s is the post-truth environment, where truth, absolute and total truths are dead, and truth only survives in sectarian contexts, um, um, either religious, political, or political. So sectarian contexts are where you find truth, and in leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, okay, and people are gonna say, Miguel, which way do you want it? Are you leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses because you're tired of truth, like you say in some other video, or are you just flipping from one truth to like a multiple set of sectarian truths here? You're moving from one sectarian truth to another set of sectarian truths. What's the deal? What are you doing here? Okay, um, okay. First of all, my reply would be: first, I love truth. I am a lover of truth. I love truth. You know, I love truth. Truth. I love the truth as expressed, for example, by the political truth as expressed by Murray Rothbard, the political truth as expressed by Karl Marx and Leon Trotsky and Andreas. Well, Andreas not so much. I haven't read much of him, but Leon Trotsky I've read. Um, um, you know, um, yeah, the truth expressed by in novel form by George Orwell in 1984. You know, yeah, truth uh, as expressed in the Book of Mormon, or in the Holy Quran, or in the writings of Charles Taze Russell, the studies in the scriptures. I love truth. I love the language of truth. I love the structure of truth. I love the spirit of truth. I love truth. But, you know, the truths that I described right now only exist in sectarian contexts, if at all. So, because these truths that I'm talking about are not obviously not hegemonic, because the hegemonic situation is that the truth is dead, right? Postmodernism killed truth. We're in the post-truth environment. That's where you get the concept of post-truth politics, you know, which is something I need to go through at some point. I think I wrote about it in one of the postings or whatever. The concept of post-truth politics. I think that I make mention of that in the um, in the political statement, the disassociation political statement. But there is also such thing as post-truth theology. In the same way that there's post-truth politics, there's post-truth theology, and that's the situation now, right? Um, yeah. The theologian can no longer speak of a God who has become meaningless to contemporary man, but he must still speak of Christ. Right. Okay, so yeah, I speak of Christ. Christ to me means the Christological spectrum, and that's a spectrum that I continue to abide by because it organizes information very well. You know, that's a spectrum I believe in, the Christological spectrum. I reject the political spectrum, and I reject the binary spectrum in terms of human sexuality. But I continue to adhere to the Christological spectrum because the Christological spectrum organizes the situation in a very elegant way. You have Docetai, you have Nestorian, you have Niceno-Constantinopolitan, you have Arian, and now you have the Mormons. So you have 5 positions in Christology. Okay, so yeah, which Christ do you like? You know, pick your Christ. Basically, you can choose your Christ. You have 5 choices. Choose your Christ. Christendom will tell you the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Christ is the true Christ or whatever, because that's the dominant position, because they imposed that right by force. Anybody who disagreed with that was, hereticized and banned or killed or flogged or whatever, burnt or what have you. So, the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches that came after it and the Orthodox Church, all these churches enforced the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Christology as some sort of axiomatic truth, which it isn't. The concept that Jesus is always man and always God at every time, and some sort of consubstantiality with God in some Trinity. All that concept is lies. It's a lie. It's not. It's just not. It's not. It doesn't make any. It's not. It's a lie. Okay, those are lies. Okay, God is not a Trinity. All right, God is not a Trinity. God is one. Okay. Yeah, and I know I need to quote the Bible here because they're gonna say, "Oh, he's not quoting the Bible." So I'm gonna just do it. Let's see. God is one. Right. Yeah. Deuteronomy 6:4. Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Mark 12:29. Jesus answered, the foremost is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Job 23:13. But he is unique, and who can turn him? And what his soul desires, that he does. He, yeah. Mark 12:32. The scribe said to him, Right, teacher, you have truly stated that he is one, and there is no one else besides him. He is one, right? Anyway, I'm not gonna go through this. This is a huge list here. It's 13 Bible verses about God is one, and I'm gonna add it to the bookmarks here. So just there's 13 verses. I think I'm gonna put the link in the description too to this, so you can go to it and look at all the verses that say that God is one, Jesus is one, or whatever. So yeah. Okay. The Christ of the radical theologian, however, is the purely human Christ who is the man for others. Okay, so yeah, the purely human Christ would be the Arian Christ or the Mormon Christ. The Nestorian one doesn't really work, because in Nestorianism only one of the two is human. Docetai, of course, is the human aspect, is an illusion. Niceno-Constantinopolitan mixes it all up. He's man and God at the same time, which is not a man. So yeah, basically, if you are into radical theology, you have to accept either the Mormon or the Arian position. And Bible students are Neo-Arian, because Charles Taze Russell was Neo-Arian. He reaffirmed Arianism in context of restoration. And the Mormons their conception of the Trinity rejects consubstantiality and is premised upon a rejection of modalism. So the Mormons absolutely see Jesus as subordinate, as second to the Father. The Father is greater than the Son. In the Mormon Trinity, the Mormons retain the language of Trinity, but their Trinity is actually a hierarchy where you have the Father on top, then the Son, then the Holy Spirit. So that's cool. That works. That's good. It's good enough for me. I'm still Arian though. I'm still with Charles Taze Russell on this, because I think that the historical Jesus research corroborates Arianism. But the Mormon perspective could be true too. A more sort of like it's just not just a perfect man who never sinned, or a Jewish man, as in the case of the Judeo-Christians, but the Mormon Jesus has a more I don't know, divine acumen to him, which is not just a mere man, which is good. I got the Mormons are fine. They're fine. The Mormons are fine. Um, hmm. Let's see what else. Christ's function in contemporary society is to serve as a supremely inspiring human example. Christ is, quote, a place to be in the struggle for human values. Human values, that can mean whatever you want. You know, take your pick with human values. That's why I don't believe in ethics. Ethics, because ethics are relative to culture and political, and not political, culture and historical context. Okay, ethics are relative to culture, political context, and influenced by political and theological ideas. So I don't know, human values, ethics. I don't know what that could be, whatever you want it to be. Um, but it supposedly Christ is a place to be. Christ is a place to be. But again, which Christ? For me, Christ would be the Mormon or the Arian Christ. Yeah, and they're gonna say, "Oh, but that's not really the way you're supposed to look at Jesus. Jesus is not. It's not about the nature of Jesus. It's about what Jesus can do for you, to and come into your heart and whatever." Yeah, all right. The problem is that the people who say that are the evangelicals, who agree implicitly with the doctrine of the Trinity and the doctrine that Jesus is God. So I'm supposed to bring this Jesus that is God into my heart. No, that Jesus is not the true Jesus. So that Jesus doesn't work for me. I don't want that Jesus in my heart. Stay out of my heart, please. I don't want you in my heart. I don't want that. If you are the Jesus that says that you're always man and always God, I do not want you in my heart. Leave. Get out of my heart. I want the Jesus that is a perfect man who never sinned, or the Son of God, second to God in context of a hierarchical Trinity, like the Mormons say. That Jesus can come into my heart, but not the evangelical Jesus. I'm not interested. Anyways, the shift away from theological activism at the end of the civil rights struggle brought a decline of interest in radical theology. As a movement, it did not survive the 60s, but the issues which it brought into prominence in America, the knowability of God, contemporary Christology, eschatology, and social activity, continue to occupy the attention of contemporary theologians. Right, okay. So this movement was basically existed only in context of the 1968 to 1973 class struggle upsurge, the movement, right? It was the theology of the movement. Cool, all right. And of the civil rights struggle or whatever. Okay. All right, yeah. But there is such thing as a radical theology discussion forum, either on Reddit, on Facebook, or Facebook. They're still there. So this says here that they didn't survive the 60s, but somebody revived them on Facebook or Reddit, because they're on Facebook and Reddit. So whatever. Anyhow, that would cover radical theology. And again, I got this from encyclopedia.com. So if you go to encyclopedia.com and search for radical theology, you will come to the article. But I'll post a link in the description anyways. Let's see. Radical orthodoxy is the next issue we need to deal with here. Radical orthodoxy. Radical orthodoxy is controversial. But I am premised on radical orthodoxy, in many ways. My commitment to restorationist Christian primitivism is kind of, in a way, based on a form of radical orthodoxy, where and also in a way, my involvement with ex-gay ministry, unfortunately, was influenced by a twisted misinterpretation of radical orthodoxy that ended up turning me into an accomplice of a fascist movement dressed up in religious terms. But that's another issue. I'm not gonna get into the ex-gay ministry issue. I've talked about the ex-gay ministry in other videos enough. I'm tired of the ex-gay ministry. I am now a member of the ex-gay community. Beyond ex-gay, .com or .whatever. Just look, just in your favorite search engine, look up Beyond X Gay, and you'll get to the blog that I'm talking about. And in there, in that blog, you can sign into the community forums and meet people and stuff. So anyhow, right. Anyways, back to radical orthodoxy. And when I'm quoting, this time I'm looking at Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is, like I said before, uh, Jehovah's Witnesses are not supposed to look at Wikipedia, so I'm looking at Wikipedia deliberately. Okay. Radical Orthodoxy is a Christian theological and philosophical school of thought which makes use of postmodern philosophy to reject the paradigm of modernity. The movement was founded by John Milbank and others, and takes its name from the title of a collection of essays published by Ruth Ledge in 1999, Radical Orthodoxy, A New Theology, edited by Milbank, Catherine Pickstock, and Graham Ward. Although the principal founders of the movement are Anglicans, radical orthodoxy includes theologians from a number of ecclesiastical traditions. I'm just gonna this article lists the 7 main ideas of radical orthodoxy, and I'm gonna go through them, okay, from a critical perspective. After being in the Jehovah's Witnesses for 2.5 years, I'm gonna go through the. I'm gonna let's revisit radical orthodoxy. Let's revisit radical orthodoxy. Take a minute to revisit radical orthodoxy after we have left the Jehovah's Witnesses, which I've already left the Jehovah's Witnesses in mind. I'm physically in, mentally out. I'm physically in only for like 72 hours, maybe. In about 72 hours, yeah, I think that the end of my relationship with them will come, and I will no longer be PMO. I will be XJW, apostate. I'll be joining Lloyd Evans, in XJW critical thinker and XJW fifth, and Cameron Fader and the 2 kids that run the True Face channel, and yeah, all of them. I'm coming to you guys. I'm coming to join you. I'll be in your ranks soon. Anyways, let's look at the main ideas of radical theology. And Milbank has summarized radical orthodoxy in 7 interrelated main ideas. Number 1, and Milbank refers to the John Milbank, who came up with the idea of radical orthodoxy. Okay, 1. The denial of a clean distinction between faith and reason, or reason and revelation, such that human knowledge is knowledge only insofar as it is illuminated by divine truth. And that is very radical. Wow. Yeah. Basically, human knowledge is knowledge only insofar as it is illuminated by divine truth. It's the absolute opposite of scientific realism, which is where I'm moving towards now, right? Except that with scientific realism, I reject this idea that, there can only be true or false. Scientific realism apparently ignores the existence of paradox, and the gray. Reality is not black and white. Reality is gray. That's my criticism of scientific realism. But I'm sorry to Mr. Milbank here. I'm moving in the direction of scientific realism. The idea that human knowledge is knowledge only insofar as it is illuminated by divine truth doesn't work for me, because then you have to define which divine truth are you talking about, and where do you get that divine truth from? Truth, again, divine truth. This will send me right back into the Jehovah's Witnesses. No thanks. So no, I don't agree with Mr. Milbank's first premise, postulate, whatever you want to call it. Number 2, all of creation can be understood only as participating in God's being, and as such, gleans for us glimpses of the nature of God without fully comprehending it. All of creation can be understood only as participating in God's being. And as such, gleans for us glimpses of the nature of God without fully comprehending it. All creation can be understood only as participating in God's being. In other words, creation exists inside God. Yeah, I used to actually believe in this. I used to have a mantra that I used to recite all the time. that I am a thought of God existing in a narrative written and edited by Him, right? That I am a thought of God. I for a while adopted that position that I was a thought in context of the mind of God, and that all of this is just a narrative that is being edited by Him. I used to subscribe to that approach. Yeah. You know. So yeah, I can see where Mr. Milbank is coming from here, but you know, the problem though is that I am not a thought, or maybe I am. I don't know. There is no way to prove or disprove that I may or may not be a thought of God. You know, maybe I am, and maybe I'm not. Maybe this whole reality is an illusion. And I was influenced at the time by the concept of Maya illusion coming out of Buddhism. You know, yeah, Maya. Okay, all of this is Maya, and I am a thought of God existing in context of a Maya that can be edited by God. I don't know. I was toying with these ideas back in the day. You know, 11ish, 10ish, 9ish. You know, 8ish. Yeah, whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah. Creation can be understood only as participating in God's being. I mean, could it be creation? He assumes intelligent design. Okay. And that looking at nature gleans for us glimpses of the nature of God. That is the same position as Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, and whenever you have videos from Jehovah's Witnesses about creation, they show like footage of animals and stuff, and they suggest that those animals, the way those animals function, prove that God created them or whatever, and that in looking at creation you can see God. You know, look, I'm just gonna say it up front. You know, I'm just gonna read something real quick that I think needs to be read. You know. Yeah. And this comes from Encyclopedia Britannica, encyclopediabritannica.com. I'm taking this from Encyclopedia Britannica, okay? Definition: evolution, theory in biology postulating that the various types of plants, animals, and other living things on Earth have their origin in other pre-existing types, and that the distinguishable differences are due to modifications in successive generations. The theory of evolution is one of the fundamental keystones of modern biological theory. Okay, and when they say theory of evolution, and this is one thing people seize on, the people in the religious right or the Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever, they seize on the word theory, right? You know, it's a theory. Theory does not mean opinion, all right, or hypotheses. Theory is like a worked out explanation for possible explanation for reality, given the latest scientific information, right? So, yeah. And again, with science, as far as scientific inquiry is concerned, you know, the scientific inquiry process is never finished. It is subject to revision. The definition of what is factual is subject to revision as new facts are discovered, right? So the factual is not ever a finished product. Unlike truth constructs in theology, political theory, journalism, or historiography, truth constructs are always a finished product. Right? The person who formulates the given construct narrative constructs their narrative and presents it to the public in a book form or on a web page or a website or what have you, and then that's it. It's the product is out there. It's it. That's it. With with objective fact about objective reality as it really is, like physics, for example, or evolution, the current body of knowledge that constitutes the body of the aggregate of facts that explains the reality are subject to change as new discoveries are made. So, you know, fact is not a finished product, as it is the case with truth constructs. Yeah. Okay, so is contemplating nature gives us a glimpse of the nature of God? I don't know. I think Contemplating nature gives you a glimpse as to the objective fact of evolution. That's what I think. Yeah, so yeah, I'm no longer into. Yeah, I'm starting to discover now that I've moved away from radical orthodoxy. Yeah, you know. Yeah, both radical theology and radical theology and radical orthodoxy. Which were the theological premises of the past or whatever. Are no longer tenable in my mind. I've moved away from them. I've woken up. Whatever. Yeah, but it's okay. But it's what I'm discovering now. But let's review. Let's continue reviewing. Um, 3. Human constructs such as culture, community, language, history, technology also participate in the being of God. It is neither incidental to the truth nor a barrier against it. Okay. Okay, so he acknowledges human constructs, right? Culture, community, language, history, technology, all right, are also part of the being of God. So, I mean, this idea that everything is contained within God, right? Again, kind of like Maya illusion, but not really. Sort of like the Dosita concept of Jesus, that the man Jesus was an illusion, while the true reality of Jesus was the divine. Yeah, something like that, maybe applied to, I don't know, cosmology. The universe is an illusion which exists inside God or something. I don't know. I'm not sure. Neither incidental to the truth nor a barrier against it. Okay. All right. 4. Theology functions through theurgy, a cooperation between human and divine work, which both ultimately belong to God. This work and its exchanges is called liturgy, where a collective human action invites the divine descent. Okay. Interesting. I like that concept of liturgy. A collective human action that invites the divine descent. Nice. Right? Like when they say, that if 3 are gathered in his name, he's present. Maybe it's true. Maybe that is factual. Maybe that is well, it's true. Maybe it's factual. Maybe that maybe it does happen that when you have a congregation gathering together and they worship, divinity descends. Hey, let's pretend it's true. Maybe that I would say that happens with the Bible students and the Mormons when they gather. Sure, I'll give that. Yeah, I would say that when the Mormons and Bible students gather, that happens. Maybe. Yeah. Sure. Why not? Why not? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Hmm. But I mean, the Mormons and the Bible students do not use liturgy, so uh, hmm, not at all. But uh, let's say that the gathering replaces the liturgy, so that but a collective human actions happen within that gathering that invite the divine descent. Okay, maybe. I don't know. Hmm. Hmm. A cooperation between human and divine work. Well, I don't know.